Hey everyone, today I'm going to be doing a video about some of my favourite photography books. This has actually been requested by quite a few people now, and I was a little bit surprised about that because I don't normally talk about books on this channel, and then I kind of looked behind me and remembered that I film in front of a bookcase, and that's probably why you wanted to know. Today I'm just going to be talking about photography books, but if you do want to see something else like this for fiction or for lifestyle books, then let me know in the comments and I can film that too. So just a little background for anyone who's new around here. I studied photography for 6 years at university. I was reading about photography before I started that course. I was reading throughout that course, and I was reading after the course ended 2 years ago. So I've gathered quite a few books, but unfortunately some of them I don't actually own, some of them I only read in the library at university, some of the ones that I own you can't buy anymore, they're out of print, and I wanted to make sure that everything I was talking about was still available to buy very easily, so that if you see something in this video that you really like the look of, you can just go out and get it. So the first book that I wanted to talk about today is called Unseen Vogue. This is something that I've actually had in my collection for a really long time. Before I started my course and before I even owned my own camera, I really loved fashion photography. Wasn't massively interested in fashion, but I just really loved the photography, especially in magazines like Vogue and Elle. I just thought they were absolutely beautiful. So this book was really interesting to me because it actually shows you some of the pictures that haven't been featured in the magazine before. And it's not because they're bad pictures, it's usually because they've just run out of space, or maybe the styling wasn't quite what they were after. There's also quite a lot of contact sheets in here as well, which I personally really like. I'm just fascinated by that kind of thing. And as you can see on this page here, some of them have actually got little markings on. I just really love stuff like this. I think it's really fascinating and definitely worth purchasing if you read magazines like Vogue quite a lot, or if you're really interested in potentially getting into fashion photography, then yeah, this might be a really good read for you. This next book that I'm going to talk about is very sentimental to me. This is called Storefront. I actually bought this from New York in 2012 when I visited there. It's an absolutely beautiful city and I would love to go back there again. But I remember wandering into a bookshop and I was just very drawn to this. There's just something really special about this book. It's got all these pictures of really old-fashioned shops in New York. I don't know if they're all going to be still there now because, as I said, I bought this in 2012 when the book first came out. Hopefully some of them are still there now. I would love to see them. I have always wanted to go back to New York again. The quality of the images is absolutely stunning, and if you're like me and you just really like New York as a city, you really enjoy reading about it and learning about it, or if you're very into architecture or anything like that, you'd probably really like this book. So obviously the book is absolutely beautiful. For me this is also quite personal because this is a souvenir from a holiday that I really enjoyed. Some people come back with things like fridge magnets or t-shirts, but I wanted to spend $50 on a book, apparently. So as I said, I studied photography at university, and something that I did quite a lot was self-portraiture. That's actually what I went on to specialise in on my master's degree, and I was researching it quite a lot and looking for books in the library about self-portraiture, and one of the things that I kept coming back to time and time again was this book called Autofocus. So this is a book all about contemporary self-portraits, and it is absolutely fascinating. If you're studying photography at university and if you're doing any kind of essay about self-portraiture or about any artists who do self-portraiture, you really need to try and find this book. I read this time and time again on my bachelor's degree, on my master's degree, and then I ended up getting it as a Christmas present as well because I kept talking about it and I loved it that much. There are some of my absolute favourite photographers in this book, like Gillian Waring, Sam Taylor Wood. While we're talking about women who take pictures of themselves, it's time to talk about Vivian Maier. This is someone who I found at the end of my degree, and I absolutely fell in love with her work because at that point I had been studying photography for quite a few years. I've been looking at a lot of self-portraits, and there had been a lot of theory, there had been a lot of discussions and debate, and it was getting to that point where I was starting to get a bit, you know, unenthusiastic about the whole thing. But when I found Vivian, it was like she knew how to have fun with photography. It's just a really refreshing way of taking pictures. There's a lot of reflections in this book, there's a lot of use of light and shadow, and it's that thing again where it is technically a self-portrait because she is in the image, however she's not really making it about herself, she just appears in a reflection or as her own shadow. I really like that because it's like there's an essence of her in all her work, but it's not always about her. I'm just really interested in stuff like that. I know a lot of other people who have studied photography really enjoyed this book as well and really love her work, so I would recommend it. So at the end of my master's degree I was feeling very drained, very uninspired. I had really burned myself out and I unfortunately really lost my passion for photography, which was such a shame. You might actually remember this if you've been around for a while because I did talk about it when I first started my channel 2 years ago. I mentioned this book which really helped me start to get my passion back, and it's Life, Love, Beauty by Keegan Allen. You might know Keegan because he plays Toby on Pretty Little Liars. So he's an actor and he's actually taken pictures from behind the scenes of that TV programme as well as other things that he's been on, and he's been documenting his life for a few years. He's just one of those people who have always had a camera on them, and he talks about, you know, his love of photography, he talks about his life. There's a lot of really personal pictures in this book, and to me this is a really beautiful way of doing an autobiography. I love everything about it. I love the way that it's laid out, I love the quality of the images, I love the range of images that's in there, I love Keegan's style. I feel like it's got just the right amount of words versus images in there. If you were one of my first maybe 100 or so subscribers, if you were around 2 years ago when I started this channel, you will remember that I actually mentioned this in a very old favourites video, and I also wrote a review about the book on my blog as well. And I don't know how, but somehow Keegan actually found it and then gave me a shout out on Instagram, which I really wasn't expecting. So not only do I love the book, but it's also got a really special memory for me as well of just him acknowledging my review and just thanking me, and yeah, that was a pretty amazing day. It's still like one of the main highlights of my existence. I have a feeling that this video is getting quite long now, but this is the last book. This is Humans of New York Stories, which I have talked about on my blog as well if you read that. You might have seen the blog Humans of New York, or you might have seen their Facebook page or their Instagram, but Humans of New York is by Brandon Stanton, and he goes around New York with a camera. Sometimes he goes to other countries as well, but it's started in New York, hence the name, and he just takes pictures of strangers and talks to them and asks them what their story is, and they tell him. I don't know how he does it. I don't know how he always gets such deep and beautiful stories out of people, but he must have a way with words, I don't know. But he just takes really beautiful pictures of complete strangers and he writes down exactly what they say in their own words. I think it is a really beautiful project. It is so moving, it's so inspiring. There are some images in there with captions that are just really funny, and then there's others with stories of people who have gone through too much and they're just heartbreaking. And it just makes you think about how every single person in the world has a story to tell. And I love that. I love that thought that every single person you bump into has something to tell you. Again, New York is one of my favourite cities, so I find this book really lovely to read for that reason. But I do love the message it has in general. I think that the photography is beautiful, the words are beautiful. I genuinely love everything about this book. Okay, that's everything. Well done if you've made it to the end. I know that this was probably fairly long. Those are some of my favourite photography books, as I said in the introduction. They're the ones that you can still get hold of at the time of filming. So I'm going to leave the links to everything in the description box below. I'm also going to leave links to any reviews that I've done on my blog. If I've ever mentioned them on any previous videos, the links will all be down there. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I don't normally talk about books over here. I usually leave that for the blog, but if you enjoyed this kind of video, give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments, and if lots of you really like it, then I can always make something like this again. And I'll see you guys next Friday at 6 PM. Bye!